So just a little bit about ourselves. So Rachel, if you could go to the next slide, please. If you don't know who we are, my name is Jo Haig and I'm the CEO of FDS. We've been in business this year for 30 years, and in that period we've been involved in over 400 odd transactions. Our main genre is supporting principally owner-managed businesses through the early stages of the growth of their business through to what we hope will be a successful exit. I began to recognise, as many people I'm sure have done, that we are facing some unprecedented times in terms of the availability of cash. So whilst at the moment cash is being thrown around like proverbial Smarties, with the government offering support both in grants and security, this definitely cannot go on indefinitely, and we're going to be at the moment at least £300 million in debt, £300 billion in debt, and I think that's going to continue. Recognising this, I think that we have to think in a different way. And while banks have a low appetite for risk in the best of times, they're going to have a very, very low appetite as we come out of this pandemic. And so we've got to think of a different way of accessing cash. And if you're an investor, also a different way of perhaps making your money work for you. So that is my starting position on why we should be looking at the crowdfunding world. So what is this, and why should you be having a look at it to consider how your business could benefit? So crowdfunding has been going for around about 10 years, but it's growing exponentially every year, and there are now more than 600 plus sites. One of the things that they offer you, unlike the traditional retail and commercial banking sector, is a worldwide platform. And as you'll see in a moment, that allows you not just to access funds from different locations and different types of people, but also allows you to demonstrate the value of your products and services on an international basis. As with mainstream banking, one size doesn't fit all, and many of these sites are tailored to suit a particular cause or an industry. And it's important that you understand which site is right for you. Now, we've set this division of our business up, and we're already working proactively with a number of businesses, both in the B2B and the B2C sector, but we're also working with people in the property sector, for instance. So whilst crowdfunding may have a sort of a brand image of mainly B2B, B2C, it's absolutely definitely not. And you'll see later on in this little presentation that whereas historically people were raising maybe tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands, people are readily generating millions and millions of investment from these sites. So one of the beauties of crowdfunding is not only can you access a really complex group of different types of investors, from those what I call MAR and PAR investors, who generally are wanting to invest very modest amounts of money. In fact, MAR and PAR investors' amounts is less than £100 per person, to what we call cornerstone investors, who are the angels who traditionally would have gone through angel networks, and they may be investing several £100,000 or in several cases maybe up to £1 million. Because these platforms have got opportunities to access worldwide contacts, of course, you've got all sorts of people who want all sorts of things from this site. So if you are actually thinking of being an investor, some of the returns that are being made on these sites can be revolutionarily positive, sometimes in double-digit figures, and certainly for equity investors can be 20 to 30% and more. But even for debt funding, you're probably going to get about 8%. Now, that doesn't necessarily, that's going to mean it's going to be secured funding. But if you're going to get 8% and you're putting £89 in 10 sites, you only need one or two of those to do well to more than make your money back. But the other beauty about crowdfunding, and my colleague Pollyanna will talk about this later, is that it helps build your brand in terms of market awareness of who you are and what you do. And some of those you may be familiar with, but one of the bigger raises was a beer brand, and I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to mention it or not, but it's probably best known as Brewdog, which is their trading name. Because you are building up a fan base of both investors and users of your product, you also, if you need to do a secondary raise, have got a ready market who, if they like what you're doing, are much more likely to invest the second time round. So crowdfunding has really got a two-pronged opportunity, both attracting the investment, but also building your product and brand awareness and building this loyal base of potential users. So there are different types of crowdfunding sites, as I've mentioned, both for different industries and sectors, and whether it be B2B or B2C. But there are also different types of crowdfunding. So donation is basically where you're just giving some funds. So just giving is probably one of the most familiar sites. Reward, and that is something maybe like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, where what you are offering is somebody something in return for their investment. And it could be something as simple as a brick in the wall, or it could be a ticket for an event. Debt, of course, is traditional debt. So they're not, in those cases, giving a part of your business away. And some of these are secured, some aren't secured. And the return on that investment can be significantly more than if you put your money in a traditional investment account. Equity is where you are actually giving a stake in your business, and whilst you may think, well, what if I end up with 1,000 investors, as will be explained to you later on, you don't need to worry about those as individuals. That's all managed by the sites in terms of paying dividends, etc. You're only dealing with one body. And as I say, I've already mentioned that there are all sorts of specialist sites. So our job at FDS is to identify, first of all, what kind of crowdfunding do you want, and then particularly which site is going to be best for your raise. And the work that we're doing now, actually, we're building really great relationships with multiple sites, and some of them are some of the biggest. We now understand fully what site suits what product. So Rachel, if you could go on to the next one. I thought this was just a little interesting slide to sort of show you the whole process. Now, for equity, if you are going to dilute your ownership, of course, we want to know, are we selling our equity at the right price? And one of the failures that people tend to make is that they don't do an adequate valuation, and they either give away their equity too cheap, or they expect too much of it. And if any of you watched that program Dragon's Den, you'll know that often people are completely vilified by making claims on the value of their business that are just unsubstantiated. So we start with giving you advice if it is an equity dilution. For all sites, you're going to require either a business plan or a storyline, which is why I should invest in this. Even if I'm giving something, why should I give it to this site? Why should I give you this money for this ticket? Why should I actually, put at risk some of my funding for an equity investment? So we need some sort of story or a business plan, dependent on the type of investment we're looking for. For equity investors, I've mentioned Ma and Pa investors and cornerstone investors. And for an equity investment, almost always, in order to give your opportunity the best lift-off possible, these sites require a cornerstone investor. And we are extremely well connected, both with private equity investors and with angel networks who want to take up equity to kickstart their, the profile of your investment pitch. Whatever sort of site you're going to go on, you need to make it as beautifully creative as possible. And that pitch document and video is what is going to make the difference to people. Like apparently they do on Tinder. I've never personally been on it. Flick through and on to the next investment or not. So we need to grab their attention, keep them there, and get them to read the whole document so that they'll stay with you. Of course, all documents have got to be approved by the sites, and we work with the sites to make sure that they are happy with what we've said. And then all these documents that we've put together, we need to make sure that it is promoted appropriately. And so there could be some social media promotion, some PR, and we would handle all that for you. When we're looking at the cornerstone investment, we call that a private launch, and the cornerstone investor sees some of these documentation before our MAR and PAR investors get a look in. And once we've secured that, we then go on to what we call the public launch, where you've got the MAR and PAR investors start to create some traffic into your site. Once the site is fully funded, and this is something that will be explained later by my colleague, it is a winner takes all in this. So if you're looking to raise £1 million and you raise 999,099 pence, I'm afraid you get absolutely nothing. So it's very important that we do this in stages, and we would advise you on how to ratchet up your funding so that you don't lose out just at the last moment. Then the round is completed, and we hope that the money gets into your bank. And then for an equity raise, we hope that there would be some ongoing dialogue with your investors. But even for a donation site, a reward site, or a debt site, we'd hope that would be keep going, because for secondary raises, it's important that you keep that contact with them, because they are going to be your future fan base. So, it's important, as I said at the beginning of this, that you have a good valuation and a very coherent business plan. And so I'd like to introduce you to my wonderful Managing Director, Poonam, who unfortunately you can't see because she's had trouble with her camera today, but I'm sure she's going to give you an explanation of the following slides. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Jo. Hello, everybody, and I'm sorry that my technical abilities on the camera are not working today. I really did try to get myself logged in as quick as possible, but as Jo's already explained, especially if you're looking at an equity crowdfund raise, it is absolutely crucial that a valuation is put together that is robust and transparent, and it's been based on real-time deal data. One of the main problems with crowdfunding raises is that you can either overvalue your business or undervalue your business, and I think it's really important, just like Jo has expressed via Dragon's Den, that we need to ensure that the valuation is robust for investors to make that connection and have that attraction of them wanting to invest in your business. So Jo's already expressed this, over 600 crowdfunding sites available, and we need to be able to pitch our valuation that's going to be the most attractive for investors. As part of the valuation, another addition to this is, especially again with equity raises, that you have a robust business plan. Jo's already alluded that as part of a crowdfunding raise, ideally you need to have a cornerstone investor, and that has to be circa 20% of the total funds to be raised. So when Jo has explained that we like to do things in stretches, the 20% only applies to the initial raise, and that's another mechanism of really bridging any investment and ensuring that goals can be met. So with a business plan, this is more important to our cornerstone investors because they're savvy investors. They need to really understand what your business does and where it's going to go and what the return on their investment is going to be. So we have conducted over 400 transactions and have the necessary experience in this field. We have over 600 plus referrer contacts, which include high net worths and various other types of investors. Also, what sets us apart from the competition is our business plans and our documents are very well structured and designed. So we know what investors would like to see, but what we do is polish those documents to give your business the best opportunity. And the look and feel of a document can speak volumes, including the brand, the tone of the voice, and how that's presented. So we at FDS have in-house designers that we work alongside with to ensure that your documents are of the highest standard. As part of the business plan, if you're looking at debt funding, a business plan may not be seen to be essential when you're going down the debt funding route. However, it will make your business more attractive to funders. So that's one of, it's really important if you are able to invest in a business plan, it will set you apart from other opportunities.
Thank you very much, Poona. Just to say to the audience out there, if you do have any questions as we go along, please do post into the chat room, although we do have a question session at the end. But if there's anything pressing as we go along, please do post a question and we'll break and do our best to answer it. One of the things that can make these investments extremely attractive, and particularly so for the cornerstone investor, is if your organisation can get EIS and SEIS approval. And Russ, who is our partner in this process of building our crowdfunding opportunities, is going to talk to you now about what allows you to be EIS or SEIS accredited and the benefits of both those. So I'd like to hand over to you, Russ, if that's okay.
Yep, thanks, Jo. So as Jo mentioned, I'm just going to go through some of the main tax headlines, and these are really aimed at equity investors rather than debt investors. And what EIS stands for is Enterprise Investment Scheme, which is a government-approved way of investing in a company. As I say, it applies to equity investments, and the arrangements have really, been a major part of the government's commitment to support businesses in their fundraising and expansion. This SEIS, which is Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, was introduced more recently, and I'll go through the main differences between the two, because you're not necessarily forced to qualify for them both, and they have different tax treatments. But as I say, the main benefits that come with EIS and SEIS are tax related. Income tax relief is available to investors who subscribe for new shares in a company. For the SEIS scheme, that is a 50% income tax relief, and for EIS, that's a 30% income tax relief. Another major advantage is that the gains that arise on the sale of those shares is also exempt from capital gains tax on the sale. And also, if investors have made previous gains recently on which they would otherwise pay capital gains tax, it is possible to defer that tax through the investment in an EIS qualifying business. So there's some real tax advantages available to investors. But as you might expect, these tax regimes that offer some nice tax advantages do come with some fairly stringent rules attached to them. And I could spend a whole hour today going through them and listing them out, but it would be way over the top and extremely tedious. So I thought I'd just spend the next few minutes just going through some of the main ones, which should hopefully give you a flavour of the types of businesses that can qualify. And the types of investors that may qualify. From an investor perspective, I think I've covered the main one here, in that the investor's not allowed to be connected with the company. And for these purposes, HMRC look at connection in 2 or 3 sort of key ways. One of them is that they're not a major investor in the company already, so you're not allowed to have more than 30% shareholding. But another one is that they shouldn't really be a director or an employee of the company, but there are, within those rules, there are some exemptions for angel investors. So sometimes your cornerstone investor would also want to become a board member, maybe a non-executive director to help support the business as it grows, it is possible in those cases to still structure the arrangement so that you get EIS, but it just needs a little bit more thought. But there are some exemptions for angel investors which have proven to be very helpful in the past. Can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. Yeah, so these are the main conditions from a company's perspective, and I think the key one is that it needs to be a trading company. So investment type companies do not qualify for either of the reliefs. And within the definition of trading company, there are also some specific types of trades that are excluded from qualifying for relief. These sorts of businesses that are excluded are things like property, heavily property-based businesses, so nursing homes and businesses like that, where the actual the real sort of value of the business is potentially backed by real estate and property. People service business, so accounting and legal firms can't qualify. And there's a list of about 12 or 14 different companies, some of which are sort of more, more onerous than others. But essentially, if you've got a normal trading type company, so manufacturing or retail or a normal service type company, then we'd expect you to be able to qualify. An important part of the qualification is also the time frame over which that business has been operating, and there's a 7-year limit on EIS and a 2-year limit for SEIS. So SEIS is clearly aimed at very new businesses. It is that first stage funding, that seed investment that is aimed for, and why you get a higher tax relief on the investment. EIS is permitted for 7 years, and actually that's extended slightly for knowledge-intensive companies. That time frame can expand slightly, but those time limits for EIS can also be expanded if you've previously raised EIS funds. So again, whilst the headline is that the business needs to be less than 7 years old, it's always worth looking at it and just doing a proper review of the position if you've got an older business, because it may be something's happened in the past that means you can still qualify.
Can I just pause you a minute? Chris Pierce is asking, can you circumvent the 7 or 2 year period by forming a new company?
Unfortunately not. HMRC have thought of that. So you actually have to look back at the underlying business, and it doesn't matter if you or somebody else operated that business, or if it was operated as a sole trader or a limited partnership. It really doesn't matter. What you need to do is have a look at that sort of business that is central to the company's operations, and work out when that business made its very first sale. And if that was more than 7 years ago, under whatever form or whatever ownership, then it won't unfortunately qualify for EIS. The funds themselves have to actually be used within 2 years for qualifying purposes, which tends to be, an investment in either the growth or employment or the advancement of the business. So you can't raise the funds and then go buy a holiday home with them or anything like that, unfortunately. So they've got to be used in the business and for qualifying purposes. And the business itself needs to be going concern and not in financial difficulty. So again, these funds can't be used to prop up a failing business. They are very much focused, and the tax relief is granted on the basis that they are in funds that are going to be used for the future benefit of the business and the future growth of the business. A couple of sort of important ones as well, in terms of pre-arranged exits, and there can't be any preferential rights, and there cannot be any reciprocal arrangements where, for example, you get an investment, but you also agree to sell some products at a discount to the investor, or offer to make them a loan. There can't be any types of arrangement whereby the investor is giving any types of preferential treatment. It is a genuine investment by an external party at the outset, but by a new investor and their capital is at risk. Again, the revenue, use that in terms of their terminology. The capital has got to be vested and it's got to be at risk. So there can't be any types of arrangements to try and circumnavigate that. It is possible to go to HMRC and ask for their approval before the shares are issued. So, and this is part of the work that we do with our clients, in that once we get to the right point and Joe and her team have done all their magic, and you've got some interested investors, then we would go to HMRC and ask for their approval. So by the time, hopefully by the time all these shares are issued, we are in the hands of HMRC, but we tend to get the timing right, so it's never a problem. We can get the HMRC approval, and we can give the new investors some comfort that actually their investment will qualify for tax relief. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, Russ. There's a question from Ian. If we have pre-approval, oh, I'm sorry, the question's gone down. Poonan, can you see it? I'm not sure I can see it. Oh, here we are. If you have pre-approval from HMRC for SEIS scheme, does that mean you will also have approval for an EIS scheme?
If effectively, yes, because the EIS rules follow on from that. So in terms of the nature of the business and sort of the nature of the company and the share structure, if you've got any other sort of external investors, that will all be the same. You just need to be careful, though, that things haven't changed in the intervening period. So quite often you can rely on the SEIS, but again, I'd always urge that you review the position properly to make sure there hasn't been anything materially changed, both from the company's perspective and from the regulatory perspective. So, for example, there were some new tests over the use of the capital put in place about two to 3 years ago. So if the SEIS assurance was pre that, it could be that actually the rules have changed slightly. But the fact that you've got an SEIS clearance, an advance assurance, that's good news. That does get you halfway down the road. But I would still urge you to have a look at it, just to make sure it's not necessary to go back to HMRC. And the final critical thing I just wanted to mention today is that the qualifying conditions all need to be met for 3 years after the share subscription. And if any things happen in the meantime, such as there's a sale of the company, so you're no longer independent, then actually all the initial income tax reliefs get withdrawn and the gains are no longer tax-free. So care is needed. We can't just issue the shares and then everything is fine. You've got to continue to monitor the position and make sure that you don't do anything in those 3 years after the shares have been issued that means that the tax relief that your investors have sought and obtained is withdrawn.
Thank you very much indeed, Russ. That was extremely comprehensive. I mentioned at the beginning of this how important it is to get your pitch right, not only to attract the investors, but to attract the users of your product and services. So I'd like to introduce you to Pollyanna, who has got personal experience of this and is currently working with several of our clients in creating some really exciting pitches to make sure that we maximize your opportunity. So Pollyanna, over to you.
Hi everyone. So I'm going to talk briefly about creating demand for your pitch and for your business through crowdfunding. So this is a quote from the Crowdcube equity team. So Crowdcube is one of the biggest equity crowdfunding platforms out there, and it really does hit home this misconception that you can just put your pitch up onto a platform and people are going to invest in it without putting any work into it. These platforms are brilliant. They have hundreds of thousands of really engaged investors, but you are going to need to do some marketing to make sure that you hit your fundraising target. So a crowdfund marketing plan is just like any marketing strategy. You are taking your customer from an awareness all the way through to being a brand loyal customer or a promoter. But the challenge with a crowdfund is that you've only got 30 days to do it. So whereas with a traditional marketing campaign, you might have a number of months or a year or even longer. This is about making a consumer take action to invest in your business very quickly. So you need to decide what you want your customer to do, which obviously in this case is going to be invest, who they are, and then how you want them to engage with your business. So you need to, one of the things that we always say to think about is you need to think about what tools you've got in your armory to create awareness that you are fundraising. So you might have a really engaged database, you might have a really large database, or you might have done lots of different things over the years that have really resonated with your customers or with your audience, and that would likely form a core part of your campaign. The other thing that I would invite is people who are looking to crowdfund to do is to promote early. So these platforms are actually really simple and easy to invest in. I don't know, obviously, whether or not anyone on the call has ever invested, but once you've signed up, you've got to complete a series of quite simple questions, which are just about the risks involved in investing in a business. And then it's a bit like being on Amazon. You don't even have to enter your card details. It's literally just one click of a button. But you've got 30 days to get someone who may have known about your business but never understood the concept of crowdfunding to sign up and invest. So the sooner you talk to them about what you're going to do, the better. But again, obviously that comes with the marketing challenge of you don't want to promote something too early and then lose their interest before the end. So it's a real careful balance of generating awareness before you're actually ready to do your raise, making them take action within the raise, but not starting so early that you lose their interest too early on. So there are some key things to remember in addition to sort of an all singing, all dancing marketing campaign. And one of those is that lots of deals will still happen offline. So it's really important not to underestimate the importance of traditional networking as part of your marketing strategy for raising money through crowdfunding. The other key thing that we see, which is one of the biggest challenges, is that it's really important to remember that you are promoting your business as an investment, not necessarily your end product. Now, there's a real catch-22 with crowdfunding because one of the major benefits is you're going to get this pool of people who are really interested in your business. So, of course, you want to talk about your end product or your end service. But actually, first and fundamentally, the people who are investing in your business are investing because they believe it's going to make them money. So don't waste that opportunity to talk about the reason your business is going to be successful, whilst also obviously referring to the reason that someone might want to use your service or business. And we always say that these pictures, they need to address three things. They need to speak to the head, the heart, and the little kid. So the head is the business a good investment? Is it going to make money? And the heart is, does the company do something good? So because of the nature of how crowdfunding platforms have grown, over the years, they've grown with a lot of really innovative startup businesses who have said, well, we want to do something to give back, which means that a lot of the investors are really interested in the philanthropic side of a business. Now, it might be that at the moment your business doesn't have that side to it. And that's one of the things that working with the FDS team, we would help you identify the right heart side of your business to put into your business plan and into your proposal. Or it might be that actually, you already are doing some amazing things, or you've got a really balanced board or team in terms of genders, but it could be anything. But it's about what is that heartstring that makes someone go, oh, this feels like a nice business. And then the little kid is something that an investor can get excited about. And it's basically, is your business cool? Do you do something that's fun and exciting? And I'm sure there are people on this call thinking, well, I'm not sure my business is cool. But I can tell you from having worked with lots of different businesses, there is always something cool and exciting to be found. So it might be that you've got enormous exit potential. It might be that the valuation is really good. It might be that you've had massive growth. Or it might be that you've got a really sexy product or a really cool service that's going to disrupt your industry. But there's always an angle to find that. And that's one of the really important things that we bring through. And then the final thing on this is, yes, these platforms have hundreds of thousands of investors. And yes, you might have your own network, but you are going to need some money to put into a marketing campaign to support it. You're going to see on the next slide some businesses who have overfunded by 170%, which is amazing when you're talking the numbers that they're wanting to raise. But they have definitely invested, not necessarily tens and twenties and thousands amounts, but enough money to make sure that they are really closing every target to make their investment. So if we can have the next slide, Rachel, please. So as I said, so in addition to marketing your pitch itself is really important. And these are some examples of the current proposals on some of the crowdfunding platforms at the moment. And you can see there's a huge array of businesses on there, from B2B to B2C, and the competition is fierce. And it's important that your pitch looks really professional and really tailored to the investment community on that platform. And that's why it's really important that this pitch document stands out and shows that the core elements of your business, your plans for how you're going to spend the money, the valuation, the financials, and also the owners. So it's really important that as an owner or an entrepreneur, you're bringing yourself into the forefront of why you want your business to move forward. And the pitch and the video that supports your pitch is the opportunity to do that. And you can actually upload lots and lots of different documents to support your pitch on the platform, but depending on the platform, depending on the business, depends on what you might want to upload. So again, that's something that we would help you work through in terms of what needs to go up. And so we've talked a little bit about this already, but you've now got your campaign ready, you've got your business plan, you've got your valuation. What's next? And the next thing to think about on your crowdfunding is your raise strategy. So as Jo said earlier, typically crowdfunding sites operate a winner takes all model. And as she said, that means that if you're saying, I really want to raise £1 million for my business, but you only hit £990,000, you are not going to see a penny. So what we would always recommend clients to do is to operate what's called a stretch raise. Now in doing this, you crowdfund for the smallest amount of money that you can do something with. And then once you've raised that, you then say, well, actually, the next stage that we want to do, we need X amount of money, and here's what we're going to do with that money. And one of the biggest mistakes, and I've had clients make this mistake with me, is that they're so surprised by the sudden influx of investors that they haven't planned their stretch raise strategy. And when you're talking that you've got 30 days to raise money, you really need to make sure that you know exactly what you're going to do with every penny that comes your way. So this isn't saying that these platforms can't raise millions. They do all the time. And if you look at some of the amazing companies that are on there, like Brewdog that was mentioned earlier, they raise multi-millions every single week. But one of the best way to do it is to give yourself the best chance to access as much cash as possible. And the way to do that is to minimize your initial stretch, your initial raise, but to be prepared for every single stretch that comes after, because people aren't going to want to invest in a business if they're thinking, well, what are you going to spend this money on? You've already hit your target. So it's really important to know that from the outset. So some final thoughts on crowdfund raising. So you're going to be left with an amazing community. Now, as Jo said, for most crowdfunding sites, though not necessarily all, the crowdfund platforms offer what they call a nominee system, which is where you're able to communicate through your 100, 200 crowdfund investors through one platform. So whether that is sending them your quarterly results or arranging a dividend, it's actually a really easy way to communicate with them. I don't want anyone sat here thinking, well, I don't want to deal with 100 investors. That's not the case. You're not dealing with hundreds of investors. You're dealing with one system to communicate with them. You can also have direct shares in terms of how people invest on the platform, but you can set that at whatever raise amount you want. So if you might say, well, actually, if someone is investing £50,000 in my business, I'd quite like to be able to have a one-to-one conversation with that person. But that's all things that you can set out at the beginning of your raise. And the second point is that this way of funding your business gives you an enormous opportunity to create a loyal community of fans. So people who are invested in your business through a crowdfund are 400 times more likely to recommend your business. And what company doesn't need 100, 300, 400 fans who are ready to proactively promote their business to their friends and families? It's an amazing opportunity. So one of the things that that we help clients think about, or we encourage clients to think about if they've already started their journey, is how are you going to make this loyal community of fans work for you moving forward? How are you going to make them part of your marketing plan? How are you going to really get the benefit out of having this great community? And then the final thing is that once you've done your crowdfunding, you are able to do future raises through crowdfunding platforms. So perhaps at the moment you don't need to raise loads of money. You need to raise maybe £500,000, but you know that in 2 or 3 years' time you'll probably be ready to raise quite a lot more. Well, actually, that again really lends itself to the crowdfunding network, and this is things that things like Brewdog and Monzo, the bank, have done really, really well in that they have created a community of fans through initial smaller raises and have kept going back to that platform to help grow their business at every stage that they are developing their business. And the reason that works is you've got people who you're already keeping in contact with, they're already investors within your business. Or there are people who have seen the success that you've had post your first initial crowdfund, so you're a proven asset. So it's a really, really, really good opportunity to do future raises. And it is worth noting at this point that for some platforms that you, if you do one raise through them, they will require that you do all of your future raises through them. Now, obviously that makes sense. That's where your fans are. But again, it's one of the things that we would always work with clients to say, this is something you need to be aware before we move on to this platform. And if that isn't for you, we'd suggest an alternative platform. Now, I know I said that was my, those were my final points, but actually, I guess this is my final point, as that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour on promoting your pitch and building your compelling marketing strategy to reach investors. So the last thing I want to leave you with is that for crowdfunding, one size does not fit all. And there are over 600 sites out there. Some are very specialist, some are very generalist. And for some businesses, it won't be right to do all of your fundraising through a crowdfund. And that's why FDS, we've identified and created this turnkey solution so that we, if need be, we are able to look at lots of different funding options to reach your ultimate funding goal.
Thank you very much, Pollyanna. Thank you, everybody. We are due to finish in about 5-10 minutes, but if there are any questions, please post them now and we'll just keep this open for a little while. If not, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have recorded this and we will be sending it out to everybody. And I do hope that you get in touch with us, and I hope you found that perhaps a different way of thinking about funding in what we might call the new world. So has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask? Either.
We've just had a question, Jo. What are the timescales from first contact with you to the money?
Okay, well, of course, it just depends on how much data you've got and how quickly you can get it to us. As Pollyanna's already mentioned, you've got 30 days from getting it onto the site. Of course, a lot of pre-work before that, because we've got, if it's equity, we've got to do the valuation, and we've got to do a business plan. If it's debt, we probably have to do a business plan. We've got to produce a video. We've got to produce the deck for whatever sort of site it is. So the more stuff you give us, and the better quality it is, the quicker we can turn things around for you. But I would say probably from instruction to completion, you're talking probably 3 months as a minimum. Yeah. Because we've got to get everything right. It is a bit like one chance on this. If we get anything wrong on this platform in terms of the look of the presentation, or we're on the wrong platform, or we're not happy with the valuation, it's like those first few seconds in an interview. It's really important that that hit is absolutely bang on. And so I would say 3 months is the minimum period. I'm looking at my colleagues to see if they're agreeing with me.
Yeah, definitely. I think 3 months is sensible, because again, it depends on if we have to go for EIS and SEIS clearance from the HMRC as well. But I think 3 months is probably a good.
So, as I understand it, just on that last point, and Russell, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that provided we believe that it is an acceptable company, we can actually put on our pitch deck and presentation that we are looking for SEIS or EIS approval. We don't actually need the revenue documentation to come back for us, but obviously we wouldn't be putting that on if we didn't think it was a viable proposition. Is that right, Russell?
That's right, and we're doing a sort of initial sort of feasibility test to make sure that we met all the rules, so that you could sort of indicate to the investors that we expect it to be available, pending getting that HMRC approval.
So generally that's not going to hold us up. I mean, bearing in mind that getting funding from a traditional source, particularly for equity, is going to take you at least 6 months by the time you've done due diligence, all the beauty parading, done 3,000 versions of all the forecasts. is definitely going to be quicker than that. But the added value is that you are actually playing not only with your investors, but with your target customers. So not only is it quicker, but it's got a 2-hit opportunity. Any other questions? Anybody out there? Thank you for that, Chris. Anybody else? Anybody got any pressing questions?
Chris will be in touch with you following the call.
Okay, well, the last slide just gives our contact details there. Obviously, we are all working remotely. There is our office number there, but at the moment we're all home working, so please feel free to call Poonan on that number, and we can then arrange a call with all our wonderful team to talk about how we might take this further with you if this was something of interest. On our website there's also another mini video vlog and a blog that gives you a little bit more information on this. So I thank you all very much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you very much, everybody.